the Sumud Podcast. I'll be serving as a co-moderator. I want to, as always, special thanks to AMD and Busboys and Poets for giving us this space and allowing us to have these important conversations. Mark, I also want to thank you for organizing this as well. We're going to open with a few remarks first by former presidential candidate Jill Stein and hopefully future president. I don't know if we can make that happen. But Jill, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I can see you guys on stage. You are a wonder to behold, and you are also like the leading light for the nation. And it's such an honor to be with you here as the model veterans, the model human beings, I must say, for all of us on this Veterans Day, because you are upholding the highest possible calling of service. You've transformed your oath of service into an oath of conscience in the tradition of Aaron Bushnell, who we'll talk about a little more later. But you are being steadfast not to a government that is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, per Martin Luther King, and that still applies. But you are steadfast to our common humanity and the peace that our survival depends on. Because at the rate we're going, we're on a trajectory right now that is just not consistent with survival for any of us. And this group of moral giants here in this room, who are all living legends, you have served, you've resisted, and now you're standing together united against endless war and genocide, and also against oppression at home and abroad, and U.S. complicity in all of this. So we're just so inspired to have you here, and we'll be introducing all the panelists shortly, but also I want to echo the thanks that Dr. Ed expressed to Andy, Shalal, and Busboys and Poets, and also a big thank you to Dr. Ed, who is the author of the Sumud Podcast, which I highly recommend if you haven't heard it. And thanks, of course, to Mark Elbourno, who's been the force behind the scenes here. And I'll just say a brief word to put this into context, just to acknowledge that the genocide we're talking about tonight is a microcosm of empire. It's a microcosm also of the triple evil that Martin Luther King referred to: militarism, racism, and extreme materialism, also known as capitalism and oligarchy. And that, excuse me, that empire abroad goes hand in hand with economic oppression here at home that people are just taking on the chin right now. And witness the $1 trillion military budget that's consuming over 50% of our discretionary budget, resulting in the incredible crushing inequality and hardship that has become a way of life for most Americans right now. 2/3 of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, half of renters who are struggling just to keep a roof over their heads, 100 million people saddled with medical debt, our health, going down the tubes, healthcare premiums that have doubled, 42 million denied food assistance, and yet we are pouring our hard-earned tax dollars into basically the slaughter, the murder, and the destruction of children, families, and working people worldwide. Also, this empire and economic oppression also goes with rising fascism here at home. The masked thugs of ICE that are grabbing people off the street, the corporatization of the press that's largely gone missing in action in its duty to hold power accountable, and our basic freedoms of speech and protest and privacy that have long been under assault by both parties and the oligarchs that fund them. The same drones and artificial intelligence that's targeting Palestinians, as we know, is increasingly targeting us too. So the bottom line here is that in this time of unprecedented crisis, it's also a time of unprecedented resistance, as represented by the voices on the stage tonight. And as empire is doubling down, we the people are rising up to stop ICE with incredible courage out in the streets, to reject the corporate duopoly, which we see happening in poll after poll, and to end the genocide in Gaza. And what's happened there has been really miraculous to see the complete turnaround in public opinion that happened about a year ago, thanks to truth tellers like yourselves. But recently, polls show that it's now twice as many Americans who condemn Israel's genocide as the numbers who support it. And that's a big turnaround from the way it was a year prior. A majority of Americans now is calling for economic boycott as well as military boycott of Israel. And the numbers globally are even more staggering, such that the vote taken in the UN about a year ago to tell Israel it had to comply with the International Court of Justice and get out and end the occupation. It had to dismantle the settlements. It has to end the genocide and the apartheid. That vote wasn't just a majority vote among the nations of the world, it was a supermajority. And in that lies incredible power. That's the final thing I want to say here, is that we do have the power to shut down this genocide. We not only have the moral authority, we have the numbers in pollings and where public opinion stands. We have won in the court of public opinion. There's also enormous power that's kicking in now in the form of unions. And people may have heard about the shutdown of the ports that's been accomplished by the Italian unions at many of the ports in Italy. And they also shut down the entire economy of Italy twice in the last month. And save the date, November 28th, Black Friday here in this country is also a day of international solidarity. And I'm hoping a boycott, an economic boycott where we just refuse to give our economic dollars and our economic support for one day, for starters, so that our moral authority can be felt economically here in this country. And there's a pressure campaign ongoing right now that Chris Smalls has helped to galvanize, basically calling for the AFL-CIO to get with the program here, to call a genocide, and to encourage its workforce, like 12 million workers in the US, to participate in the economic and military boycotts to stop the flow of weapons and support to Israel. One other thing I want to mention, and that is this UN proposal with the same name of our meeting here tonight, and that's the Uniting for Peace proposal. That's a process whereby the rank and file in the UN can do a complete bypass around the Security Council where the US has a stranglehold through its veto. So this other process called Uniting for Peace allows the UN to basically follow up with a vote, which remember was 90%, which I mentioned a year ago, where the UN said Israel has to get with the program and abide by the ruling of the International Court of Justice. 1 year ago, the UN said, you got a year to get out, Israel, and then we're going to pass some measures to compel that. So that time has arrived. And if you wonder why there's a whole flurry of proposals before the Security Council right now, to basically do a Trojan horse, to basically put in a so-called stabilization force, which would what? It would stabilize occupation. It would stabilize genocide. It would stabilize apartheid. They are rushing here to try to jam those proposals through before the real proposal to unite for peace goes through. And this would send a protection force under the control of Gaza, under the control of Palestinians, to basically protect Palestinian lives and to ensure the delivery of food and shelter and medical care. And all this, as you know, is so unbelievably critical now that winter is on its way and there is no shelter, essentially. There's no food, there's no shelter. The Trump plan has been a complete, as expected, pack of lies and deception. It's essentially a real estate investment plan for Donald Trump's family and friends. So what's going on there now under the guise of a peace process and a ceasefire? It is not a ceasefire. It's a slowdown in the rate of murder, but that murder goes on a daily basis, and the famine continues. What they have allowed over by way of trucks is just, just the most outrageous pretense of a solution. It doesn't even, keep people alive, let alone address the famine that has been raging there. So that too is a source of our power, uniting for peace. We can do that at the United Nations, as well as doing that here as just humanity, asserting our moral compass here on Black Friday coming up on the 28th of November, in sympathy with the strikes that will be going full bore in Italy on the 28th and 29th of November, plus the usual boycott, divestment, sanctions, and so on. So this is just to say we've got the power. Don't let them tell us that we don't. And so much of our power is because of voices like these that are gathered here today, and that we have the honor of hearing speak to us about their incredibly powerful experience. So I just want to give you all a big thank you, a big shout out, and a round of applause. Thank you so much to our veterans. And I'm going to hand it back to you now, Ed, to take it from there. Thank you so much.
So as you all know, today is Veterans Day, and for many, Veterans Day is a day of reflection, not celebration. It's a moment to ask, what does service truly mean if it doesn't defend humanity and justice? Tonight, we're joined by veterans who believe that true service means standing up for peace, even when that means challenging the very system they once served. These are veterans who witnessed the cost of war and now stand united for peace, from Iraq to Afghanistan to Palestine, reminding us that real courage is choosing humanity over harm. And I'd be remiss not to mention the devastation in Sudan, driven by the UAE and enabled in part by the US, a painful reminder that the fight for peace and justice extends far beyond any one border. So before we begin, I want to honor Airman Aaron Bushnell, a veteran who saw injustice and refused to stay silent. His final act wasn't for war, but against it, a plea of conscience in a world too comfortable with suffering. May his memory remind us that peace takes courage, and the truest form of service is standing on the side of humanity. Let's take a moment of silence for Aaron and for every life lost to war and oppression. Thank you. And with that, we will have a Q&A with the audience towards the end, but I would like the panelists to introduce themselves. I don't think many need much of an introduction. The impact that you have had is just amazing, and it's truly an honor to be in your presence. I'm going to start with Josephine, if that's okay.
Hello, my name is Josephine Guilbeau. I am a 17-year Army veteran and a former intelligence officer. I'm also an associate director at Eisenhower Media Fellows. I am here today because I am a witness to the genocide in Gaza, and I refuse to stop talking about it.
Good evening. I'm Hani Nofal. I'm an 11-year submarine officer veteran. I resigned back in November of 2023 because of my recognition of U.S.'s complicity in Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. And I'm also Palestinian American.
My name is Greg Stoker. I'm a former U.S. Army Ranger. I did 4 combat deployments to Afghanistan during the ill-fated and ill-advised and for-profit global war on terror, which we are entering the second phase of, with the warmongering surrounding the jingoism surrounding Venezuela. I am now an anti-imperialist activist and journalist, sometimes at Mid-Press News.
Hello, my name is Brian McGinnis. I served in the Marine Corps 4 years, 2000-2004. We were sent to Iraq. I was an LAV driver, gunner, and saw the whole country participate in occupation of Iraq. After the Marines, I got married to my wife, who's Palestinian, and found a place to put all these unprocessed thoughts and ideas of what I had experienced in the Marines through the eyes of the oppressed, and had a complete 180, and I've seen the light, and now I want to speak for justice.
Good evening, my name's Anthony Aguilar, I'm retired U.S. Army, 25-year career, retired this past March. Shortly after my retirement, I was employed by the UG Solutions, which was the security component of the now defunded and falling apart Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And I was in Gaza for about 46 days and witnessed the distribution sites, but also the systematic genocide that's been designed by the Israeli government, the Israeli forces, and complicit hand in hand with the United States government. And since my return, I have been a whistleblower for what I saw. And my background from prior to going into Gaza in my years in the Army, the last quarter century, I have fought in every war that the United States has been a part of, whether it's been in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Tajikistan, the Southern Philippines, places that most Americans don't even know that we're fighting war as part of this large net of the global war on terror that continues to this day. As Greg said, it continues by a different name in different places, but it hasn't ended and it won't end unless we put an end to it.
Hi, I'm Bill Tottenham. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, member of the Veterans for Peace, turned humanitarian activist and organizer, father, and a human, and that's why I'm here. And that's why I've done what I've done, is because I believe that no life is worth more or less than another, and definitely my life is not worth more than a child's life, and a Palestinian child's life at that. So yeah.
Welcome. A round of applause again, please, for the Twins. Give it a chance to get some tea and some hydration. All right, Josephine, can I ask you the first question, if you don't mind? What moment made you realize that serving your oath meant standing against the system that you once served?
Yeah, the processing of what I've experienced, I think overall my intentions are the same, because I joined the military for economic reasons, but I truly believed what our institutions were telling us about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And when you listen to, this sort of programming inside of America, especially towards the military, it's like, and you really believe it, it's hard to say no to, right? It's hard to not want to do that, because we are convinced that we're protecting the people, we're defending the people, we're ensuring the people here are safe. And so that's the oath we took. That's what it means when we say we took an oath. And for most of my military career, those are the things that I thought I was doing. I really believed that I was doing that, only to realize that I really had been tricked. And, I was a pawn and being lied to. I was being lied to about what I was participating in. But that intention remains true now. My service to this nation, the ideals that I hold and principles of humanity, the values that this country has the potential to hold, I still hold that oath true to my heart.
Thank you, Josephine. Would anybody else like to answer that question?
I'll go ahead and answer. As far as the reason I joined, very similarly, rooted in the principles that I had an idealistic approach in terms of the mission set that I'd be doing and the way I'd be contributing. And I grew up in a background where I was very familiar with the situation overseas. I lived in Jordan for many years when I was a child and visited many summers growing up. And the way I saw it was, it's better for me to be on the inside and be able to communicate the perspective of people that would be affected by the war fighting effort, whatever that is, and whatever position I was in. But obviously, the certain lines did get crossed for where my principles lied, and I recognize that as a commissioned officer, a leader in the organization, I didn't have a choice to be able to change decisions that were being made at the policy level by the elected officials, by the political appointees that were representing those those policy mission sets. So I had to make a choice at that point. I could either continue supporting that instrument of national power to continue to project our foreign interests, or I could resign. And so I chose to resign to be able to use my voice and speak out and raise awareness for the situation and our support of the foreign interests.
Thank you. So this is for anybody that likes to answer. How did witnessing war or occupation firsthand change your understanding of courage and service?
I mean, I guess this was a journey when people ask like what turned me like against US foreign policy. It was an education, it was I guess an awakening of the educational variety. Took over like 10 years. It started with, being the top tactical operations center, like kind of plugged into what we call the kinetic strike targeting cycle, or I'm not sure if they updated that verbiage at all, but basically like where you're just like cycling through drone, like targets for like drone strikes. And, just like the 16 guys who are still rotting away in Guantanamo Bay with like very thin, I can't even call it like really circumstantial evidence at all. I mean, that's just who was being targeted by Obama's policies, which were way more violent, not just in terms of the amount of quantity of strikes, but also the operation tempo for special operations direct action missions went up significantly under him. And so just seeing and recognizing, because then I became like, started to go more into like human intelligence pipeline by being like a field interrogator for my unit. And yeah, where there was just a lot of operations, which we would call dry holes. It's just, it was mandated by command that you have to go out, even though we're supposed to only be targeting high value targets. But on like certain days, like 9/11, there'd be this mania, like you have to go out and you have to quote hit something. And even though we didn't have any actionable intelligence, so they're just like hit known, likely suspected. So it was the drone strikes and also literally being terrorists on like hitting targets that we didn't have any actionable intelligence on. So you go in at night, maybe offset by like 5 kilometers so they didn't hear the helicopters or whatever, and then sneak up, put ladders, mount snipers on the ladders, cut the door, and everybody wakes up with like giant armed night vision people in their rooms. They're just screaming, and sometimes, the doors get destroyed, the windows get broken. And I just remember one time we absolutely annihilated this compound. It was like not annihilated, like destroyed it, but like a lot of damage was done for nothing. And this was during COIN, like counterinsurgency operations. So I was as like the intel guy, I like had the money, but someone messed up the money because we're supposed to pay for all damages. And it was only like $50. And I was talking to this like 7-year-old head of household. And he just looked at me like I was insane. And it was the first time I like felt embarrassed with my service. That was really shocking. And then it took like 10 years. I wanted to go into the CIA. I got out, went to Columbia University and started doing international relations and anthropology, and that's where I got like exposed to post-colonial theory. We had read Edward Said, Orientalism, a Palestinian professor at Columbia University. It kind of made sense of like why we were able to do that to these people because of institutionalized racism, not just baked into the military, but to our entire academic structure, our government, and of course, our economic system, which is why we were there in the first place. So it was, I don't know if that answers the question. I know it's kind of a long one, but I just don't want to take up too much time, but like, it took years for me to get that.
Very good, very, thank you so much for that. I personally didn't know what to think. I just took on my military, the lessons I learned through the Marines forward after my enlistment and tried my best to live out, major goals of getting a job, getting married, having a family. And so I kind of brushed whatever I had done aside and just focused on the next task at hand. And then life happened. It was ugly. It was messy. I got married. That fell apart. So that all aligns with, what you hear about veterans being, fucked up and in the head. And I can definitely relate to that. Most veterans can. I think we all can. We're all a bit messed up. And but veterans kind of hold it as a mark of honor or something in a weird sick, twisted way. So anyway, I carried forward and living my life, and then I met my wife, Hani, and she's Palestinian, and I fell in love, completely unaware of what Palestine was or in all of its history. And so as I fell in love with her, I learned about her experience and her family's experience. And what resonated the most was her mother and her experience with, coming across being treated mean and unfairly and aggressively by Israeli, border patrol and custom agents when she was just trying to go back and visit her mother. Her mother just trying to visit her mother and where she was born. And that's what twisted me up. That's what got me very irritated and saying, this is wrong. And once I placed myself as a military guy, wearing all my flak jackets and gear, and then saw and thought, that another Israeli soldier is doing this to people, it all kind of connected. And I finally broke through to see how unjust and brutal and vicious people get when they're set in the military position, the position of authority. And mainly these people are 18 to 22 years old, thrust into this position of authority with weapons. And so that's just clear to me a horrible recipe for inhumane behaviors. And so that's kind of how I came around to seeing the military and what America is using military for, and just the authoritarianism of it as absurd, wrong, and really I want to do everything I can to speak against it now.
For myself, I don't know if you've ever gone to a museum and you've seen a portrait, and as you're looking at it, you feel that no matter where you turn, it's looking at you. You ever experienced that? So as I sit here right now, and Pearl Bailey is staring at me off of that wall, you can see, never find yourself until you face the truth. And I served in the Army for 25 years. I don't have an excuse. I deployed to war after war after war after war after war. And in doing it, the power behind the military industrial complex and in our culture, of what our culture has become, is that it's romanticized, going to war, serving your country. And at no time did I take an oath, or did anyone up here take an oath to a king or to colonialism or imperialism. But we did take an oath to our nation, and we feel that what you're doing is in line with your nation's values to protect your nation. I watched the World Trade Center come down. I was in New York when that day that happened, and the visceral anger from that if we don't fight them there, we will fight them here. Right? You've heard that.
I mean, that's what I told
Yes,
myself.
I've heard it every day. We don't fight them there, we will fight them here. And you search for that. You search for that confirmation bias to make you feel like what you're doing is right. I've never found it. And after 25 years of service, and could have very well continued. A lot of it for me was not leaving it because of what would my identity be? Who would I be without this? I joined the Army at 17. I mean, I joined the army before I was even old enough to vote. And in my last assignment, which led me to the point where I decided that I did not want to be a part of becoming even higher ranking in this machine. In Afghanistan, we'd been there for years. You said you've been there, you deployed 4 times to Afghanistan? And every time I deployed to Afghanistan, it was not a 20-year war. It was 20 years of 1-year wars. We changed our policy, we changed our strategy every time. 1 year we were training village militias. The next year we were training elite commandos. The next year we figured out it's going to be a combination of these things. And year after year after year of seeing it, myself and others that said, this is not working. This is not working. And this will fail. And military leaders lied and lied and lied and lied, because what came out of that war was the creation of 16 additional general officer positions in our military. It's hard to walk away from that and feel like you're either quitting or that you're, in a way, being a traitor to your country. So for me, that's why I stayed. But on the final days in Afghanistan, we decided that we were going to have to go into Hamid Karzai International Airport, HKIA, to pull out the last of the diplomats and the last of our equipment, basically shut it down. I was the battalion commander for the headquarters battalion of the 18th Airborne Corps, the element that spearheaded the staff to be there to withdraw. And in those moments of us trying to figure out how to leave the most powerful military in the world, held captive by the Taliban, who we said we defeated year after year after year, and the emerging ISIS Khorasan, or ISIS-K, that was emerging in the wake of what we had done. And as we got into that last plane and that last aircraft and that last C-17 to fly away, the great United States, who did we negotiate with to make sure that we would leave safely? The Taliban. The enemy that we said was so bad. We negotiated with the Taliban and begged them and paid them pallets of money in agreements to leave everything behind. That wasn't an accident. We begged them that as we leave in our last aircraft, don't shoot us out of the sky. That would be embarrassing. Let's not have another Vietnam. Let us leave, and let us leave under our terms. And the Taliban agreed. You've probably heard this quote before, but there's a quote out of the book, "And the bear went over the mountain." And in that moment, we were standing there, as we're standing in this tent, as everything is getting ready to go. Days before was the Abbey Gate bombing. 16 Americans were killed needlessly. And we're standing with Taliban commanders, men that for 20 years we fought against, who we said were the most evil of the evil. And here we are negotiating. And I had said to this man, I said, much older than me, he said, you know, I've been fighting imperialists since before you were born. He said, and you're no different. He's like, you Americans and the Russians and the Brits and who's going to come next? You own the watches, but we own the time. It's true. Because our military intervention, time and time and time again, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, soon to be in Venezuela, we do it for the wrong reasons. And when it doesn't work out, we leave. And we don't build nations, we destroy them. If anybody were to say right now that Iraq is a better country than it was in 2003, I would say you're ignorant. If anybody say that Afghanistan right now is a better country than it was in 2001, even under the Taliban then or now, it's ignorant. To say that Syria is better than it is now than it was, ignorant. To say that the United States is more secure now than it was on September 10th of 2001, ignorant. It's not. We're in a whole new world of danger that we've created, and I was a part of it. So part of me in speaking out in what I witnessed in Gaza and what's happening to the Palestinians is because I love our country, and I don't want to see my children die in wars fought for colonial, iconoclastic, idiot leaders. Excuse my language, but what they are.
What was the bad word? There was the iconoclast and idiot.
Barry, did you want to say something? Or-
Oh, no, sorry, I'm just holding this. No, I don't know what I'm doing with my hands.
So let's talk about the psychology of this a little bit. How did you unlearn the dehumanization that war taught you, or even the system sort of inculcated within you?
For me, I think that I haven't said this enough probably publicly, but I really want to thank my mom for something she did growing up with me as a devout Catholic. She instilled in me the teachings of Jesus Christ. And, you know, being in the military, you sort of have that at your core. You know, things that he said about humanity, about love, that we're all one family. Those things were in me and on my heart, but I sort of got layered, it sort of got layered with, you know, brainwashing, programming and whatnot. But for me, psychologically, I reverted back to those messages of Jesus as I was witnessing this genocide. And so instead of seeking validation, you know, of things that I had been programmed to do, to believe, sorry, I didn't seek validation of that anymore. I sought, what did Jesus actually teach? And am I living those teachings? Regardless of, you know, what we're programmed to believe in America, does it align with this light, with love, with humanity? And so for me, as 2 years has progressed, I really found myself becoming more spiritual, returning to seeking that truth of Jesus, in knowing that what he said is a way that a path that we can choose, a path of love, a path of light. And you won't be let down by that, and you won't fail in that. So for me, my faith has been a huge part of this transformation. And I really owe that to my mother for ensuring that as a child and young adult that I was instilled with those teachings.
And Josephine, last night you shared that your mother taught you grace and forgiveness. When Jesus taught to give you, those are the tools you use to help, you know, bring peace into other people's hearts and, you know, find common ground and come together. And that was another thing that your mother taught you that I thought permeated to me and makes a lot of sense. Grace, forgiveness, we all need that. We all need to extend that to others, especially now, always. I always had humanity in my heart. I just thought the other humans were bad. And I bought into the narrative that I was doing the right thing, killing the bad guys. And I was I had that illusion in my mind. And like I said, it just kind of disappeared when I met my wife, and those things just kind of that helped my psychology change. And that's how my psychology changed.
Yeah, it was definitely multiple factors for me on my unlearning. But I think what really set it all in motion, in short, was empathy. Yeah, the Sandy Hook school shooting of 2012. You know, as a father, you're like, where are we in this world, and where are we in this country? And you begin as all of the lies unravel, the lies that were packaged in American pride and flags and wrapped and sold to us. It's yeah, sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a minute. They begin to unravel, and it all leads back to the slaughter of the innocents, the slaughter of human beings, and really just people like us across the world, and even in this country. You know, I want to break away from that for a second to go to the flotilla and kind of the epiphany, even though I've already had this mindset, but of being in this racist, toxic environment and absorbing and just getting a toe in the water of what the Palestinians experience. And the thought was, this is like if the KKK were running the prison system and the judicial system. And then I was like, wait a second. They do. That's exactly what's been going on and still do. It is imperialism, and all of it can be found through research. But shedding the pride, right? Getting back to unconditional love, asking ourselves and each other those moral questions. You know, when I was on the other side before that, I was not a good person. I had strayed from the North Star of my moral compass. And so losing myself and getting back to that path of righteousness, and not self-righteousness, but righteousness, doing the right thing for the right reasons, seeing the unconditional love, the humans involved in us that are solely, you know, the lies that we're taught through pride, right? That love is not proud. It can't be, right? Because unconditional love means that we're all flesh, we're all even. When you have pride in carpentry, that means that it is in front of, you are in front of that thing. You can't have equal unconditional love through that. And so, you know, I think it's hypocritical of us to seek unconditional love from a God and not in turn reflect that. And so, yeah, really just researching social media was big on. I was one of those that was really passionate on the other side. So being pushed and questioned, finally, like that passion took me over the edge to research on my own and to shed Fox News. And so, yeah, and really just to shed my privilege and experience life in a less privileged way than I grew up through kind of a anthropology kind of way of my own, going back to the snooty high school that I went to, coming from the family that I came from, to go back as a custodian and to see like what that was like for custodians at a snooty high school, and to see life differently. But along the way, right, the Black Lives Matter movement, seeing innocent of human siblings slaughtered just because of their race, and to see the attack against the LGBTQ community, and just to see the marginalized people and the attack that this elite class, time after time after time again, who has hijacked right now this government, and for a while, right, I'm not trying to overlook the fact that this country was founded on racism. I'm not, but this country has been hijacked, right, by fascism. And so that was kind of the unlearning curve with some other details that I'll not include here. So yeah.
A bit of a branch off your question. I would say that I didn't unlearn dehumanization because from a very young age, I was exposed to people of multiple ethnic and religious backgrounds. I was well traveled very young, and I have half siblings that their mom is from Eritrea. I have friends from all sorts of backgrounds, very, very much just exposed to people from all over the world from a very young age. I'll say that I didn't quite recognize the degree to which the people around me who just seemed like normal people did that. And to some degree, I looked past it. I'll tell you, so I'm in the submarine force, you know, this is the focus of our mission says, I can't get into the specifics, but it focuses on operations at sea, blue Navy versus blue Navy type of operations. And so the big rhetoric in terms of what types of operations we'd be doing is with respect to the great power competition, more recently strategic competition against peer adversaries such as Russia and China. So a lot of the training that we do, a lot of the actual missions we do revolve around those conversations. And so when we're talking in a wartime scenario where you have to potentially sink a ship or a submarine that carries a bunch of Chinese or Russian people on board, you often find yourself, let's say, rationalizing why that's okay. And I would say, in terms of conduct of warfare, where there's an agreement and it's obviously there's a justification behind the war, there's an assumption here. You could say that, hey, they're on a wartime vessel attempting to conduct offensive operations against you and you're defending yourself, and that could potentially justify some sort of wartime operation. But that being said, the rhetoric that was used in these scenarios by leaders in dehumanizing the other guys, they're the bad guys, they're the ones that are out to get you, and obviously enlisted are the ones that are listening to that rhetoric, they're going to adopt that mindset, and over time that just normalizes that dehumanization. And you're in those surroundings, you're listening to that, you can correct it, but at the same time, it's easy to just let it go and focus on what the training is at hand or what the operation is at hand in that very moment. You have too many things to think about, too many decisions to make. It's often you look past those type of things. But those are conversations I would actually have in these long watches we would do at sea, whether it's back in the nuclear power plant or in the it's called the con, talking to some of the people that when I was standing watch. But having these hypothetical scenarios about, hey, that guy that's on that submarine, he's actually just like us. He has good intentions. He's trying to defend his country. He's trying his best to provide for his family. And here we are, we're gonna go and try to kill each other because some guy up in a big house told us to go kill those people. And a lot of times when I had these conversations with people, they'd obviously be like, yeah, you're right. And I didn't really think about it like that. And so it's one of those things where when you're talking about conduct of warfare, it's a hard balance to strike. And I think if more people started with humanizing each other, regardless of how different they look or the language they speak or the God they believe in, then we probably wouldn't have to have these kinds of conversations like we're having here tonight, and people just focus on actual defensive wars against the couple of bad actors that exist in the world.
I'll be brief. It's kind of interesting you talking about like how institutionalized it was, this demonization of other people. Obviously that's always existed, and especially in like infantry or just like light dismounted infantry. Like maybe a lot of people come from rural areas. I mean, yeah, and there's different already problematic beliefs there, but you also exist in sort of like echo chamber. We were actually talking about this on an interview like last year about the word associate. It's the word associate. Okay, so basically, intelligence is not information. It is processed information that meets like mission requirements to inform operations, right? So there's like different jobs. I kind of did some collection, which is I collect the information, write a report, and then like an all source analyst like Josie would take that and like image intelligence and other stuff and turn it into a product for presentation. And then if you're going to like make a kinetic drone strike based off of that, it would have to be like presented to Jet, like a lawyer, in order for them to sign off on it. And every step of the way, from collection to analysis to clearing, was institutionalized racism in like terms that make you automatically think someone's worse than they are. So if I was, talking to a couple guys and I've determined like these guys need to come with us because they're like Taliban foot soldiers or whatever, I would use the word associate. He's someone's associate. So he comes to, or he's put on a target list or a target deck, and you look at the word associate and just take it for granted. And then like this entire machine of violence is just like based off of these words and already preconcepted notions that are actually completely baseless. And it was while I was doing that, and I was not directly involved in like the drone strikes that were happening. I was watching them go off on the screen, and I was just like, there is not really a standard of proof for what's happening here. And I've just been reflecting most on that like today, because I met like one of the legal reps of guys still in Guantanamo Bay, and there were definitely a number of guys who absolutely, no one should be there. The place shouldn't even exist, but absolutely should not be there. And we can't admit our mistakes, so they're just doomed to rot away forever. And now with the expansion of ICE, the ICE is involved in the potential plans for expanding Guantanamo Bay as a potential deportation hub. So, the war state, the police state at home is, never, there's never been any daylight between it. And it just seems more and more likely, like the next forever war is gonna be waged here. There might be some, land strikes or limited engagement in other parts of the world, but it looks like it's here. And that's something that should be hugely concerning. Because everything ICE does reminds me of what we would do when we had zero intelligence, but we're told to hit stuff. That's why they're rolling up, like, they don't have any actionable intelligence on like actual MS-13 or criminals. That's why they're showing up to court dates, because they know that they'll be there. It's lazy. And so if we accept the premise that, fascism is imperialism turned in on itself, like I see a lot of kinships between like direct action special operations missions and ICE raids, like literally. And now for some reason they have OPSCOR helmets. Well, I don't want to get like down a whole rabbit hole, but like their physical fitness test is 15 push-ups and like 32 sit-ups. Okay. I'm like, I haven't worked out in forever. And, I could still probably do that, but like they have equipment now that only Rangers, SEALs, Marine Force Reconnaissance, and Special Forces had, even 13 years ago. But now they're decked out in this like cosplay operator stuff. And that's a message to the American population that they are going, it's kind of what I view as terrorism, that we are going to now get the full brunt of what we did for decades, centuries overseas. And that was part of my education process for sure.
Rudy Giuliani could pass the fitness test to be nice. That's how low the bar is. Not a high one. And he's hurt. But like for me, what motivates me and why I'll continue to speak out, sorry, is that the mouth this thing.
Don't please.
Why? So today I was up at Columbia University and spoke with the student body there, and I told them all, I said, your generation will save our country. If we look at now, and we look at our administration to call them fascists, most fascists read. This administration doesn't even read. They're like Cliff Notes fascists. We take all of the cool things that fascists do, but don't actually study and understand. If you read the news today, just today, in the United Kingdom today, one of our longest and closest allies in the intelligence community, today have stopped sharing intelligence with us. That is a huge gap in our national security. Why? Because we keep blowing up boats off the coast of Venezuela without any justification. And they were like, you know what? We're not giving you intelligence anymore. You're not responsible. You shouldn't have this. And they stopped. That is a watershed moment in our relationship with a key ally. So now, who do we have to rely on for intelligence? Well, the intelligence of the government that has dragged us into every war that we have fought. That is not good for our nation. So when you look at Donald Trump, when you see the opposition, and I call it the opposition, right now, what I would think in terms of a call to action is that never interrupt the opposition when they're making a mistake. And this administration is right now. The average American doesn't connect to the Oval Office looking like Liberace's bedroom. The average American doesn't connect to ballrooms being built while they're not getting food. There is a watershed moment. We saw that earlier this week in New York City when Nofal was voted in a mass turnout of election. And you notice that not one person from the far extreme to the other, not even the biggest name, not even the Bannons or the Giulianis or the other talking heads have said one thing about the legitimacy of the election because it was overwhelming. Votes matter. So in addition to action, in the actions that our administration right now is taking, it is having an impact. Our challenge as a nation is to make sure that we take action soon enough before they drag us into a world war. Because that's scary when you think about Venezuela and the fact that Russia is transferring thousands of surface to air missiles to Venezuela. I mean, this is a dangerous time, and the people at the helm, this is not a JFK moment. This is like, we gave our nation to a drunk driver who doesn't even have a driver's license. And it's scary, and we see it. So these updates that you see right now, go back and look at the USS Gerald Ford, moved out of the Mediterranean on its way to the Caribbean. The most advanced nuclear aircraft carrier in the world. And we put it in the Caribbean. Why? Because we have leaders that don't understand national security. Our closest allies stop sharing intelligence with us because our leaders don't understand national security. I would ask all of us to go and look and try to find it. What is our national policy? What is our foreign policy? Israel first, but we don't have one.
I mean, it's heavily ideological, especially when it comes to like Venezuela too, and like Iran. There's been a mania about invading Iran since I was in. It existed in the late '90s. Project for a new American century has always like the birth of the neocons and stuff like that. Even though it was always unfeasible, I think Dick Cheney was misquoted by Salon magazine as saying like, the time to invade Iran was, when we invaded Iraq. It was a misquote, but we never really had the capabilities to do that, it turns out, at all. We generally have a delusional, and when I say we, I mean historically, these legacy politicians and bureaucrats and think tanks pushing these old ideas that haven't worked decade after decade. There's a lot of ideology and rooted in American exceptionalism that's completely detached, So, we can do Vietnam, we can do Iraq, we can do Venezuela now, using the same tactics and strategies, but like, it really doesn't work, and it's driven by and we can all just blame it on capitalism or whatever, but no, it's heavily ideological, rooted in American exceptionalism, and we haven't learned anything. And I think a lot of the anti-war, anti-imperialist vets kind of started off being like, we lost. In the wake of the Vietnam War, there was like Vietnam syndrome where, people were scared to get into conflicts again. And like Desert Storm was, what's supposed to take us out of Vietnam syndrome because we won. Dick Cheney said it was his favorite war when he was Secretary of Defense. Yeah, so, but at the same time, they couldn't admit that, they're scared of like losing another conflict. They thought that, we need to just get into another one. And it's just like this, especially with Venezuela, it's heavily ideological. It's not just capitalism itself. It's kind of like people surrounding the Trump administration being like, Cuba needs to go, and so does Venezuela because of the revolutions. It doesn't matter what you think about them. That's a lot of that's what's behind this. And Trump is heavily influenced by the Floridians. He is constantly surrounded by, and their hatred of the Maduro government and Chavez who replaced him is insane. It's intense. It reminds me of trying to debate with like an Iranian monarchist who's heavily Zionist at the same time. It's that kind of ideology, and it's influencing policy at the highest levels. So I think when it comes to could we, and of course Marco Rubio is one of those guys. Our Secretary of State, he's one of those ideologues when it comes to Cuba and Venezuela. So I definitely do agree with Anthony here when I think we're going to get in some way stuck in with that nation, probably pretty soon. And it's just completely disheartening now because we have learned time and time again that this happens. We don't think it's going to happen again, but like there was so much more pushback to the opening days of the Iraq War. I was only 11 at the time, and now we're just being like, oh, Venezuela, what other insane shit can happen now? Because like our violence has been so normalized, we've actually ramped it up a notch. Because now what didn't exist before this moment was the state policy of intentionally bombing every hospital in a region. That has now been normalized for modern warfare forever. Because warfare is a lot like law. You need to be worried about like what precedents you set and what you tolerate to have happen. Okay, so why not another regime change war? Why not? We already did a genocide. you know? So the global security situation is absolutely, as you said, in the trash. And I think we're definitely sleepwalking our way into another Iraq 2.0. So it's not gonna look the same. We no longer have that kind of power projection, but doesn't mean we're not gonna try. And I don't really know what that means going forward, but I hope veterans like around the country, even if we disagree on like left, right politics, can be like, hey guys, maybe this isn't the play. Because like, I feel like the American people fundamentally do not understand why we're doing this. I mean, we understand. It's the same reason for the Iraq war, but they also just accept that we're at a point where like, we can't control our government anymore. We can't, like, our voices don't matter. So like, what's even the point? So we definitely want to get that back somehow. I don't know, sorry, I don't know if that answered the question. I just ranting, and I drank I was exhausted, so I drank one of these evil Celsius drinks, so I'm gonna shut up, sorry.
We appreciate you, Greg. So, just to pivot a little bit, the other day at the Commanders game, Donald Trump was there, and he offered commentary that there's a high number of individuals enlisting for the military. And that makes me wonder, if you could go back to your younger self, right before you signed that paperwork, what would you say to yourself?
Um, you know, it's a question that I've asked myself. Would I change anything? And it's hard to say yes, because I feel like without that experience that I have had, I wouldn't be where I am today. And being able to use that experience, being able to have been so deeply intertwined in the machine, to understand it in complex ways that I think most people don't understand, as someone who was an intelligence officer with one of the highest level clearances that exists. And so it's hard to say I go back and say, don't do it. But I will tell my children, no. My children, I don't find there's honor in joining the military. I think there's too much information that's available now. You know, as opposed to 2006 when I joined, I don't think, you know, we had technology, of course, and cell phones, but it just wasn't as available as it is now. And I think people really have the information now to make the choice not to be a part of this. And to your point about the numbers of recruitment, I'm not sure of the accuracy of that, but I want to remind everyone that many of us here joined through something what we call the economic draft, the poverty draft. We joined because we were poor. Jolly just walked in. I saw him do an interview where he said he joined the military because he was poor. I joined the military because I was poor. And right now in America, we have a lot of poor people. We have a lot. You heard Jill say 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 27 million do not have health insurance. These factors factor into people joining the military. When you have no cards to survive, this is what they want. This is what they do. This is how they do it. It systematically makes Americans suffer to join the military. So this is just the reality of it. So as much as I can't change the choice I made, and I think, you know, it was destiny for me to go through what I went through and to be able to be here today and speak with that credibility, because you cannot tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. You cannot. I lived it. I did it for 17 years, and no one can take that away from me. But for the children now, for the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, I tell them, please don't join. Don't do it. I'll help you, you know, do something else. There are people in my community that have told me they want to join, and I help them find other paths, other trades, other things they can do so that they do not have to do that.
For the record, Josephine, we would listen to you anyway. You have that credibility.
Yeah. What I would have told myself now when I joined would have been, hey man, you don't need this to prove who you are as a man. You know, as a young, sheltered child, watching Rambo and Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, I know everybody on this thing and everybody can relate to the sensationalized vision we had of what it was to be a man. You know, it's like muscles and killing and shooting, and at least that's what it was for me. So when the idea of what to do after high school came up, and my friend was going to go to the Marines, it just fell right in line, and so that's what I went for. So I just tell myself back then that, hey man, this isn't going to make you a man. This won't certify that, and don't let that be a part of why you're doing this. And some to that extent, I was born well off. Our family was very well off. My dad was a great doctor, a great man, and so we lived in the biggest house in the middle of the town, small town. So there's no hiding my privilege. Yet at the same time, it was a small town, so everybody lived together. So there was no segregation between whatever high class people and low class people. So I felt very integrated with my community and tried my best I wore a chip on my shoulder as being a rich kid, maybe subliminally people thought I was a rich kid, so I tried to be extra tough, extra poor, or act like I didn't have a lot of money or something like that. So that's another part. I wanted to get my college paid for so people couldn't say your daddy paid for your college. So I had all these really immature, silly reasons, which most young people have entering into this decision. And so that's what we're dealing with. That's what I was going to try to do whenever I'm trying to talk, was like, man, we're not talking about, rational, reasonable things. Talking about lots of extreme emotions that are telling people to make these commitments as far as, enlisting into the military where they know what they're signing up for. So it's a wild world. But anyway, that's what that would kind of be what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I think I would say question everything for sure. And I got entered in '98, so the internet was kind of coming on board. And I would say, yeah, do your research. And I would say read War is a Racket by Major General Smedley Butler. We were taught about him in Marine Corps boot camp, taught about being the most decorated Marine of all time, but not taught about his politics, not taught that he said that he was a frontman for capitalism. I would say that you are gonna fight and do the same thing that the Army did to the Native Americans here. That you're fighting for war pigs and war profiteers and the elite, that we have nothing, absolutely nothing in common with these greedy, inhuman, narcissistic, self-serving, only serving money and themselves, versus the rest of us that are humans that care about each other and serve love, because we follow our hearts and we're big-hearted people, right? And that's most of the people around the world. And I would say, go through it, because like Josie said, it's an experience that is allowed for so much, but that you'll be on stage here in DC in 2025, and you'll be talking about trying to end it, but right now, end it all, right, and not ever again. But you'll be fighting to fight for the release of a 16-year-old American boy from Israeli torture prison, Mohammed Ibrahim. And so you may not see it now. Get through it. Get to the other side. You'll make it through your world being turned upside down by believing that the United States was Superman, by believing in so many things that pride tricked us into. And get through it, because you'll find family on the other side of it.
So let's open up the questions to the audience. Would anybody like to ask any questions? Please.
Any of you like to comment on the issue of refusing an illegal order? For example, the Navy commanders that are blowing up ships, has anyone had experience with that? And you touched a little on the sort of crazy people that are in charge, but what about the removal of JAGs and other guardrails from the military leadership? Thank you.
As an officer and as a tactical and operational commander, a lot of those decisions fell on me, and oftentimes, especially in special operations, you want judge advocates, general JAGs. The good ones, they say, are the ones that find you a way to get to yes, not tell you no. The truth is, sometimes the answer should be no. And if you look at what's happening now with the removal of a lot of the attorneys out of the Department of Justice and moving in judge advocates from the military, what's very dangerous about that is that if you were an attorney in the military, you aren't unbiased or unilateral in your decision making, because the commander that you work for is the one that signs your evaluation report. That evaluation report is what dictates whether or not you're going to be promoted, whether or not you're going to succeed or progress. So the person that you're working for is also the person that you should sometimes be telling no, because I can give you any scenario that you can find in an operational or tactical operation where you can find a way to make it moral, ethical, or legal in accordance with the United States Code of Military Justice. There's not one situation that someone couldn't give me that a very good judge advocate operating under the notion of find a way to get to yes, don't tell me no, cannot find a way to connect the dots to make it legal. And that's what's really concerning in looking how the judge advocate now, under the Biden administration, did not succeed, fell apart, and then under Hegseth it was removed, but there was this effort to remove the judge advocates general from the military chain of command and place them under a civilian authority within the military, to where your judge advocates, you have administrative, you have those that deal with, you didn't pay soldier Sergeant Johnson, you didn't pay your child support, like you've got to do that. Like you have administrative, and then you have, but your operational JAGs that provides guidance to commanders in war. I guarantee you, there is not one commander that would not authorize those strikes on those boats, Hellfires coming off the rails of drones, if a JAG didn't sign something that said, yes, you're covered legally. They're operating under legality that's
Not present.
It's not, yeah, and then the person that then gets to adjudicate that is the person that said to do it. It's the convicts running the prison. So it's dangerous, and the fact that we now have Supreme Court justices that are looking at those things and allowing those things to also happen domestically. I mean, the way I see it is that this is what I think Donald Trump's mindset is. And if you go back to Louis XIV, the Sun King, I mean, Donald Trump looks like the Sun King, but his famous quote was, La terre c'est moi, which is the state is me. I am the state. Donald Trump believes that the state serves him. We serve him, and everybody underneath him serves his end state. Now, he also has hedgelings in the departments that also think that the state serves them. And so they each have their little fiefdoms of power. The State Department, the Defense Department, the War Department, the Department of War, which is just ridiculous. And that you have these things happening without the checks and balances. And to be frank, that's our responsibility. And we aren't doing enough. Everybody in this room can all agree, well, we're doing enough. We're not doing enough as a nation. We're not. When in Italy, when they said, do not turn around on the flotilla, and they did, they shut that country down. We're not doing enough. We're not as a nation. You shut down the West and the East Coast for a day, you get all the longshoremen to say no more, and you shut down the American economy, they will listen. We're not doing enough. So until we the people actually act like we the people, they will continue with what they're doing. They will continue to find ways to make it legal. I mean, when you look at the Nuremberg trials, when all of them were put on, they were like, oh, look, I have all these documents that said that what I was doing was okay. Well, who signed those documents? Oh, I did. That's not how that works. That's the world we're in, and we have to take that power back.
But I followed the collateral damage assessment,
Sure.
authorizing drone strikes, I had a lawyer work through it and really work those template things.
There, as dystopian as it sounds, there is a flow sheet. There is a checklist. First of all, is there something to strike, right? You gotta have something to strike.
I guess.
Second, do we have the capability to strike it? Do we have the authority to strike it? And then it goes into this subjective requirements of,
Population density.
does the commander want to do it? That's on the criteria, does the commander want to do it? It's dangerous, because I'll tell you, at 21 years old, as an infantry platoon leader, leading soldiers through Fallujah, having the authority to drop bombs on buildings, my mother was still doing my laundry a month before that. We have got to tighten up combat authorities to give commanders on the ground the ability to act in that way, because there's a lot of things that happen that should not.
No, and the governments and allied organizations learn from each other. They empower each other. They give political cover for each other. And now that we've just empowered the IDF and normalized what they've done, we can expect the same kind of normalized institutional impunity now with what we're seeing in Venezuela. And just to kind of round off, I think maybe the spirit of your question, people can get out of the military with somewhat little friction through conscientious objector exits. And there are organizations that will work with people, and you can absolutely get out, discharge under honorable conditions from the US military with no loss of benefits. And this is something that has always been there since the Vietnam War. No one will ever hear about it in the military because they will not tell you. So if you know people in there and they're kind of asking questions, and you want to like actually have a resource, Mike Preisner has a podcast on the Eyes Left podcast that goes through how to do it. Sorry, I don't have the actual title of the episode now, but it's actually fairly simple. There are a lot of support organizations that will help them get out. So you can absolutely just refuse orders by filing as a conscientious objector and generally keep most of your all of your benefits.
Well, to your specific question, military personnel not only should disobey illegal orders, you have an obligation to disobey illegal orders. I hope and I pray that when he is finally out, he's going through the process of retiring. The U.S. Southern Command Geographic Combatant Commander, the one that resigned when the strike started, he was like, I'm out, I'm not gonna be a part of this anymore. When that guy's out and he can speak, I hope he does, because that's going to change things. He's a 4-star general appointed by the president as a geographic combatant commander, and he quit. New on the job. He had just got there. He was like, we're gonna do what? No, not gonna do it. And he resigned. So yeah, I hope when he is fully out that he can that he can come out and speak to that, because that would be huge for the veteran community and for the active duty community, that we should disobey illegal and unethical orders. We should.
I wanted to ask you, what kind of response have you had from friends and people that you served with, and do you stay in touch with them? And do you see more of this defection happening from the military and in the branches that you served in?
So I still have a lot of people that I speak to that are still in the military, active duty, reserves, and I have a lot of friends that are veterans. And when this first, when I first became aware of the reality of the powers inside of Palestine and what was going on there, I felt like I had a close enough relationship with them that if I told them the truth, they would immediately change their minds. I was like, wait, and I felt the same way about Congress. And I met with Medea and learned how to, lobby in Congress. But the reality of the lessons that I learned lobbying in Congress wasn't just how to go and speak to your leaders, it was how corrupt they are. Because you want to believe that you're going to be able to go have a conversation with a leader, especially in your, your dress blues, and that they're going to change their mind. And I felt this way about my former colleagues. I felt this way about my friends, that all I had to do was tell them the truth. I was met with so much backlash. I lost so many relationships along the way, because for me, a genocide was the red line and is the red line. And if you could not stand against that, I could not have you in my life. Now, when it came to my family, I haven't seen my family in 2 years. And for the first time, I'm going to see them for Thanksgiving. Why? Because they distanced themselves from me over me speaking up for Palestine. And more recently, after what happened to Charlie Kirk, they have completely changed their stance towards Israel. And now they're going to come with me, pass out Catholics for Palestine flyers for Thanksgiving. I'm going to go visit them. I've had Fulberg Colonel friends who are full active duty Fulberg Colonel message me apologizing. A very good friend of mine, a major in the Space Force, called me, apologized for the way that they treated me. I would say that so many people have come to the realization, not as quickly as I would like, but definitely people have reached out to me apologizing for how they treated me when I first attempted to tell them the reality of what's going on in Palestine and realistically across the world.
And I would just like to say, like, we have to remember, and as anti-imperialist vet, I take a lot of inspiration from the Vietnam backlash. It was an intersectional movement. Veterans were definitely a part of that, an important part of that, served in Vietnam. And I try not to be like gatekeepers, like, oh, you're finally saying it now, because that was 10 years of more than that, of sustained protest, direct action. Way more radical stuff happened during the Vietnam backlash than would ever happen now. And that's like people were still coming on year 8, year 9. So hopefully more people will turn around.
I'm very struck by the epiphanies that a few of you have described, from coming from very conservative backgrounds, religious backgrounds, watching Fox News and feeling completely brainwashed and indoctrinated, and then having this complete turnaround. You're up here talking about imperialism and fascism. It sort of bucks the stereotype. And I wondered if your experience in combat or as part of the military was necessary for you to have that epiphany, or whether you think it can happen to other members of the public, because God only knows we need that to happen in this country, for more people to have that kind of turnaround. So what could it take? Does it only happen because of the experiences you've had, or could it, what could make that change the rest of the country?
I'll quickly say, I did need my experience to help me bounce off and then travel the other distance, and gain intelligence, gain knowledge, and then continue. And so I did need that experience to see what I'm opposing personally. That's me.
Yeah, I don't think I did, just because I was fortunate enough to not have any war or combat, as a burden to bear. But I think what my time did is it delayed me, as far as researching and finding out. It regrew and re-strengthened that pride and nationalism that was taught right to us in boot camp, and right after we're broken down and built back up in their image, right? The brainwashing that happens before our prefrontal cortexes are developed. But yeah, I think it definitely has helped as far as giving me, as far as a platform now, obviously. obviously, to speak to, because I think the people of this country respect veterans. The government never has, and we've seen that from the bonus army march, right, to what's going on now, trying to privatize and take away veterans' affairs and the benefits that we have, so.
I think for everybody, it's different, but that question in terms of, for me, like, I would not be able to speak out in the way that I'm speaking out with the energy that I'm putting behind it if I didn't have the experiences, because in my mind, there are some out there that will absolutely go forward into the darkness unafraid with the belief and the conviction that they have, whether they've seen it or not. There's value in that. Me, I'm the type of person that, again, I've spoken out about Gaza and about what's happening to Palestinians, but there is not a thing that I have come out to say that is new at all. People have been speaking out about this for years. There's not a thing that I have said. But for me, I am willing to put my life into this. Like, for me, it's either I die doing it or we make a change, because I've seen it to the point to where, like, there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever at all. I don't care if my own mother turned against me in this, I would still move forward, because it's the right thing to do just as a human being. Now, I'm very fortunate that my family is incredibly supportive, so I don't have to worry about that. But for me, having to have the experience that I had through the military, in a way, it also gives some credibility that when you go to Congress, you walk in there and they try to tell you that you're a Hamas or you're a terrorist, or that you support an organization that's paying you to be a protester. It's like, I'm not. I mean, I grew up as a Republican, probably, if had I not read a book in the last couple of years, I might have voted for Donald Trump. I lived the life this way. I'm not that. I'm you. I went to West Point, graduated from West Point, and served in the Army. I'm you, Congressman so-and-so. So are you Hamas? So in a way, it does give us some legitimacy. But for me personally, I would not be able to have the conviction and the courage to speak out had I not witnessed it myself. And for those that have spoke out without having to see it based on their conviction of humanity, I applaud that. I absolutely applaud that. As Greg knows, you've got dumb rangers and smart rangers, right?
Jury's out on this one.
Yeah. So, when it hit me, but I've been totally convicted to it because of the experiences that I have, to know that in all the places that I've been, there is nothing on this planet that I've seen that compares to what is happening to the Palestinians in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank. There's nothing that compares. And I can say that with conviction from what I've seen. So there's that. And I guess if there's any value of what I spent 25 years doing.
I think I was on the Palestine quite a long time ago, and I've been involved in activism quite a long time ago, for quite some time now, but I wasn't a public figure. I don't think, without my military experience or what I experienced in the military, I would have blown through all my comfort zones as being an introvert and generally a really private person to now having social media. On October 7th, I had 108 followers. Those were all my own friends on Instagram and stuff. And I don't know, without actually engaging in this, because October 10th is when they started dropping JDAMs in Gaza. I've had personal experiences with that kind of ordinance. Yeah, and we were watching the live feed, and my best friend, who was a field grade artillery officer and fire control officer in Baghdad, was like, "Yo, are you watching this? Could you do that in Afghanistan?" I was like, "That would never get authorized." I was like, "Can you do it in Baghdad?" Absolutely not. And we're watching these talking heads, these career paid for Air Force colonels be like, "Yes, you totally did that in Mosul," and stuff like that. So the Israelis can absolutely do it now. And, I did 8 years of therapy when I got out. A lot of it centered on my military experience. And I took it seriously. Sometimes it was twice a week. And I went through like this, like a period of like 4 years where I thought like I was good. Crazy. Yeah, and then I just started watching that, and it kind of like went right back into a place I'd rather not be. And like I spent like 7 days just like straight up drunk the whole time, like just watching the live feed, and then I came to the decision either I'm gonna go the way of a lot with my friends, or I'm gonna get involved in a more serious way. And like I only felt that there was two options. So I guess like if I didn't have like emotional, like really messed up, trauma driven response to like the ordinance, I don't think I would have gotten involved publicly at all. So I guess something good came with it, perhaps.
To answer your question more directly about, do you have to have this like trauma experience, right? Because I think that's kind of what we're all describing, is the reality that we've all experienced something to a degree that has become traumatic for us to process after knowing, what it actually was. I don't think people have to have a traumatic experience to become awakened to the reality of the world. I think right now there's so much awareness that has happened, and I keep saying we're sort of transitioning from a period of pushing for awareness to a period of we have the awareness. As far as like the American people, the majority of American people do know what's going on at this point as it pertains to Palestine. Now I think we have a long way to go to teach about other interconnections of imperialism and capitalism and so forth, but at the very least I feel like we have that awareness as far as the plight of the Palestinians, and now we have to move into this transition of collectively moving together in that awareness with the same message of what we want as the American people. So I don't think it's taken, a traumatic experience like what we have for all of these millions and millions of other people to come to that same reality that we have when it comes to what we've done in the Middle East and what we're supporting when it comes to Palestine. So I think anyone can be in the circumstance to become aware of the reality.
Got a question?
First of all, big thank you to all of you. That's all I'll say. Very good, thank you. Number two, first round's on me. Anything you want, you'll take your order. And number three, I guess we started, Jill Stein made a reference to Stein and Bushnell. I'd like to know if you happen to know what the reaction of the military community at large was to Aaron Bushnell's last message, and how he took his life, and what impact that had. Preferably if you happen to have if you have a pulse check of members who are actively serving and how they felt about what he did in his message.
I think you two were actually active duty at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So
Yeah, at the time, I was actually the chief engineer on submarine in the shipyard. Most people that worked in the shipyard that I was part of the same command of, they had to park like a mile away and walk in, nature of the work site. But as a chief engineer, I got to park right in front of the office. So actually, after that happened, I brought up the concern with the CEO of the unit, because I said, hey, if this enlisted person felt that way, there's a potential that other enlisted personnel feel the same way. At this point, I had already resigned, but I was still awaiting approval on the administrative chain for my resignation to go through. And my CEO, he was supportive of my resignation, supportive of my reasons for doing it. But nonetheless, we didn't share perspectives at the time. So we had a healthy relationship, but obviously we didn't agree on things. Long story, so back to the Aaron Bushnell question, I ended up actually putting a keffiyeh in my car on my passenger seat, wrapped it around it, and parked my car in reverse right in front of the office, just so that people could see look, there's the engine's car, and he's got a keffiyeh there. But that way, I was inviting anyone who wanted to talk about it. And only one person actually came and talking about it at that time. Later on, over the course of the next 12 or so months, multiple people talked to me about it, and obviously I shared my Palestinian background and my perspective of things in a professional way. You have to balance, obviously, the position with those types of what are considered political conversations to maintain good order, discipline. But nonetheless, a lot of those conversations were had, and a couple people did come out. But most people, I would say, were unbothered by it, in all honesty. Just those few that were very bothered.
Yeah, I'd take it a step further. Not only were most not bothered by it, it was suppressed by the military, at least from my perspective, being active duty. When that happened, there was active suppression in discussing it. And the imagery or the talking about it, I something that's hit me later, because I'm just starting to realize more and more about how our news and how our media is complicit in a lot of this. But we all ever heard of the Armed Forces Network, AFN? So when we're all deployed overseas and the only channel you can get is AFN, AFN doesn't have its own channels, it just broadcasts different channels. The news channel that is always on AFN is Fox. So I'm serious, it's how it is. So when the in the your orderly room or in the army, where you're at, the unit TV it's on Fox, and Fox was suppressing that by order of the government. Don't show that. It was from my experience, it was not only not talked about, it was actively suppressed as almost gaslighting. Hey, everybody, you're aware of what this person did. If you're going through things too and you need to talk to somebody, it's like I think he did that because he's tired of being complicit in a genocide. Like, I don't think it's I think he was crazy. I think he doesn't want to stand for a genocide anymore. So, but they try to paint that picture, and it's nefarious, and we see it. But yeah, from what I saw, it was largely not only just not talked about, it was actively suppressed from what I saw.
I interviewed a number of lower enlisted from different branches. What I mean by lower enlisted, like specialists, privates, just like 19, 20, maybe 21-year-olds. Yeah, institutionally, it varied, because the military is not a monolith. Every unit has a different culture, so it's really hard to pin that down. But generally, a lot of people didn't know what to do with it. What I was hearing, what their command was saying was if you have any strict, basically any mental health issues, there's a number you can call by. And also we have a job to do. So keep it going. But in terms of how individuals dealt with it, at least in the combat arms, I talked to some Marines, some airborne infantry guys, and just the gallows humor. It was a joke, associated with mental illness. The military itself, the military culture is incredibly disheartening. So, I got asked a lot, what did Aaron Bushnell make a difference with active duty service members? No. Overwhelmingly, no. It was either a joke or they just ignored it, or a gallows humor punchline. So that's just the reality. So I generally don't try to get people out of active duty. I try to scoop them out if they're disaffected veterans for this exact reason, because that culture is so consuming and surrounding and all encompassing. You literally are told you're property of the government. I was told if I needed a girlfriend, if I actually needed a girlfriend, the Army would have issued me one. So, get ready for deployment. That's how it exists. So no, unfortunately, I don't think Aaron Bushnell was real at all. But he did with some veterans, and that's what's important.
And that's what I'm going to speak to, is I know several new Veterans for Peace members that are young that have conscientiously objected because of Aaron Bushnell and because of him highlighting the hypocrisies and watching unfold in genocide what they were taught not to do by international law, and what they were taught. My good friend and Joy Metzler, who is a 23-year-old Air Force Academy graduate, and she conscientiously objected because of that, because of the genocide in Palestine because of Aaron Bushnell. So I think he did reach people and a lot of people, right? I think obviously across the world. I think in general, it's hard for veterans in the military to shed that pride across the board. I think you see that, in the reservists that refused in the IOF, right? There was like 250 that are out of 60,000. So the numbers are relatively small, but I think we're growing in awareness and the organizations that Greg said, are available for people that refuse unlawful orders, and for consciously objecting are Veterans for Peace and other organizations that are out there, and always, right, just make sure if you know people and we have to educate them and give them pathways out. I'd love one day to see the military turn into a work program of rebuilding infrastructure and having high-speed rails and housing and all the stuff that this world that we should live in instead of what we do now.
I just think it's so important to say that after Aaron Bushnell self-immolated, I actually went to his vigil outside of the Israeli embassy, and I don't know, in military, in an honorable thing to do in the military, whether it's a funeral or a vigil, when someone dies, is to wear your dress blues, your full blues. And so I wore my full blues, fully expecting there would be other people there that were his commanders, his colleagues, his friends in the military. Not one person showed up there to this vigil that he was stationed with or friends with, a commander, nothing. Even when my father committed suicide, he was a veteran. I was in OCS at the time. All of my TAC officers who had just smoked the shit out of me showed up to my father's funeral in dress blues to support me. The fact that they didn't do that for Aaron Bushnell shocked me. It shocked me. It was another part of my reality check about the political influence in the military, where you can't even show up to your airman's vigil because it's too political. It was, obviously I'm getting emotional about it because it still enrages me of how much even camaraderie, even this supposed love and family that you have in the military can be taken away from you in an instant over political views by corrupt leaders. So that was my experience at Aaron Bushnell's vigil when it came to active duty and their response to it by those who were in his chain of command.
Gotta talk about Aaron, man. What a commitment. That lighter, it wouldn't work. That's commitment, man. Right? I work with two 82nd Airborne veterans, active Green Beret National Guard, a prior Army veteran intelligence guy who was working with analyzing and verifying topographical maps in Afghanistan. Got a guy getting ready to join Air Force. And there's two other guys. We got Frank and Jared and Travis. They're not in the military, but got a lot of military guys at my fire station that I work at down in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Aaron Bushnell's act did not affect them. They they just got all the side notes about his questioning Aaron's mental stability and this and that. And so, again, most of the people get sidetracked with the propaganda or efforts made to just devalue and dehumanize and sway the core purpose, which Aaron made so clear why he did what he did. He did not kill himself. He did the most extreme form of protest, and that's what he did. So God bless you, Aaron.
Got one more question, right here.
I'm curious, especially since many of you come from a right-wing background, how you assess the growing discontent among parts of the US right wing with Israel and to some extent broader US imperial tendencies.
I'm gonna answer this question because I actually still work with a lot of groups who identify as conservative Republicans. I work to bring information, the right information to them, because their stance on American policy with Israel has completely changed. There's a very strategic way that a lot of the people on the right that I work with are working to try and help American people to continue to see that truth. But certainly, without a doubt, the Republican base has divided over Israel. Israel has become a single voter issue for a lot of Republicans, especially, like I said, I don't know if you were here earlier when I mentioned Charlie Kirk. My Republican family completely changed their stance on Israel after what happened to Charlie Kirk, and that has that domino effect, especially among the younger generation of conservatives, has validated something they already knew. They already knew our unwavering support to Israel was wrong. They already knew that us sending this money to fund the bombs was wrong. They knew that, but what happened to Charlie Kirk validated it, now allowing them to have a platform that they're using to speak out against Israel. And that's why we're seeing so many conservative voices going against this, the Israeli is our ally narrative. So certainly the tide has totally changed. And we can see that in the desperation of Lindsey Graham and his rhetoric at that recent event that he did, and Ted Cruz. You could see just how desperate they're becoming to bring people back into that propaganda. But unfortunately, it's too late. Too many people know the truth. Israel's not our ally.
Yeah, so my background and family, not political at all, just FYI, I'm the most political people from my family. But I've been very plugged in with a lot of right-wing crowds. I'm actually politically conservative. Don't obviously align with a lot of the mainstream Republican ideologies. But a lot of the people I know that were very much pro-Israel Zionist perspective, the beginning of the campaign post-October 7th, almost all of them are now on the other side. So they've completely changed their mind. Many of them say, "Oh, I swallowed the red pill," and they reach out to me and they obviously thank me for my voice early on. And so that's something that, just like echoing what Josie said, that we're seeing. I do say, so there's one guy I know, and he probably is a good representative of some of the people that will never change their mind. Very smart individual, also another submariner, went to law school, practicing lawyer, brilliant guy. He is a self-proclaimed Christian evangelical. We sat on the phone for like 2 hours. This was relatively recent, like 3-4 months ago, and we talked Israel, Palestine. He actually reached out to me after I did the resignation speech over in Capitol Hill a little while back. And in our conversation, he explicitly acknowledged Israel's committing genocide against Palestinians, no doubt. But they're still God's chosen nation. And so even though I don't understand God's plan, I have to acknowledge that they're God's chosen nation, and that's just part of my belief system. And so we're dealing with people, even at the highest levels of education, very smart individuals. They have this indoctrination where they believe that the actions of Israel, from a international law, human-made law standpoint, can be looked past on the basis of religious dogma. So that's a really hard thing to unravel with these individuals. And the point I often make when I'm talking to these people is the term Israel is just a word. I could call this cup Israel. Does this make this cup chosen? And so just to help them realize, obviously, this concept they have. Number one, it's rooted in a false narrative of biblical scripture. But even if you assume that biblical scripture is 100% correct in that narrative and interpretation, the label of the state of Israel, the secular state of Israel today, is literally used as a tool to be able to use this rhetoric to be able to brainwash people just like that. So I don't know how you get around that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's I'm gonna answer it like this, it's a multi-pronged approach. I think, we have to ask the deep penetrating moral questions, and reminding, people that we're humans, that Palestinians are humans, and what's going on is humans. Also, educating, right, about the truth of the occupation and the creation of Israel, and the Nakba. And so we have to meet people where they are in their education fronts. It's a multi-pronged approach, and we have to try these different avenues, like Uniting for Peace, right, as a certain avenue with the UN, and at the very least, organized to put pressure on the Security Council countries and incoming Security Council countries, to not accept this false stabilization force of being proposed by Trump and you know, the axis of evil. And so, and on the front of bringing Ibrahim home, and the innocent Palestinian children hostages, and then the innocent Palestinian hostages that are adults as well. And so I'll just end it on that.
Well, I'm gonna let Greg say the final word. Greg? And take us home.
Oh, okay, sure thing. Well, I can't really comment on the last question. I'm now a militant, dirty leftist, but I did grow up fourth generation Army, all East Coast liberal elite officers who always vote Democrat. So just goes to show you that it's a bipartisan system of war, and what we need to be doing is actively working, reaching out to people on the disaffected right and the disaffected left. I'm sorry, I'm calling liberals the left, but this is a unique opportunity with Chuck Schumer, following the tradition of Sun Tzu. When your enemy's making a mistake, absolutely interrupt them. So so we have to be reaching out to all disaffected people and trying to get them on side and trying to teach them about why this is happening. And again, the same thing fueling the forever war here at home, same thing fueling what's happening in Palestine and Venezuela. And we all know what it is, and we just have to teach them how to conceptualize it. So thanks, guys, and thanks for.
I'd like to give some closeout words. I want to thank everyone for listening to us today. I think we all have realized the privilege of our experience and our voices, and the sacrifices that we're making are at a bare minimum compared to what we're witnessing inside of Palestine. I also want to take an opportunity to do a call to action, because there are so many things going on and we need every single person involved in a project. So if you're not working on something, you should be. And so there are a few things going on that I want to talk about, and I want to echo what Phil is saying about Mohammed Ibrahim. Mohammed Ibrahim is a 16-year-old Palestinian American. He was born in Florida. He was born in America. His cousin, Saifullah, was murdered by the IDF, beat to death. He was kidnapped in the middle of the night from his home in the West Bank and has been held inside of Israeli torture camps for children for 9 months. He just had a court date of which it was extended again to the middle of December 15th. We are being told that Mike Huckabee, a traitor to the American people, refuses to help this American child, refuses. We know that we have to pressure our leaders. We have to pressure the White House. We have to pressure Congress. I need every single person to be involved in those actions leading up to his court date in December, because we have got to get him out of there. I have heard reports from someone who is directly inside of the U.S. Embassy in Israel who goes to meet with this child, and they are starving him. He has lost weight. They are beating him every single time he is visited by this person. He has marks of being tortured and beat. We have got to get this American child outside of the Israeli torture camp. How can you do that? Care National on their website has different calls to action. AMP, AJP on their website has different calls to action. Veterans for Peace, all of their social media platforms. Jolly, I know you've talked about this. We all have calls to action, numbers to call, emails. We have got to get every single organization involved in emailing, in writing statements, in collaborating together to get this child out of the Israeli torture camp. We need this win.
Sorry, if you join us tomorrow in Congress, so if anybody has time tomorrow or the next day, and you want to go around passing out information and pushing members of Congress to release Mohammed Ibrahim, please come see me or Brittany on Bertrand afterwards tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yeah, Phil's gonna be there. It's at we meet in the House Side Rayburn Cafeteria at 10 a.m. And thank you, Phil, you're gonna be there with us, right?
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Oh, wait, do we, I wanted to say. Does Jill want to make a final statement? Sorry. About what you're.
I mean, my final statement is just that you guys are totally amazing. To remember that we have won in the court of public opinion. You have won in the court of public opinion. Power concedes nothing without a demand. We have to keep bringing that demand right home to them. That's exactly what you're doing. That's what we're doing together. We need to just be reminded that we are successful. We have transformed public opinion. Your voices are the core to that success. Keep doing what you're doing. I hope you all run for office. I want to be able to vote for candidates like you. And your power is absolutely unchallengeable. You're really the best voices that we have out there. So keep doing what you're doing, and everybody out there should just remember that we together are absolutely unstoppable. We are going to win this. We have already won in the court of public opinion. Now we just need to bring that win home. You're doing all the right stuff. We have a very corrupt political system, so it's going to take a lot of work. You know, this is empire. Stopping the genocide in Gaza means standing up to the empire. But when we win this, we win it for us all, and we're going to go on to win other things after that. So thank you all so very much for being here tonight and sharing your incredible wisdom and your vision with us. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. So arguments that I found out, it's a two-way order Christian.
No.
Like, oh.
Yeah.